This is the intricate part. You really I just like to do it as a standalone unit. All these layers. The mucosa. That's the part that's in intimate contact with whatever you're eating or drinking. Simple columnar epithelia, by and large, everywhere. Particularly, this is all about the stomach, the small of the large intestine. You see, when we get to the esophagus, because the food is really in its rough form, we have stratified squamous, non-keratinized. The stratification is all about basically your protective function. So it winds it until you get down. And once you get down to the stomach, it makes an abrupt change to simple columnar. There's a pretty good slide about this in the slides. After that, it basically stays that way, simple columnar with goblet cells, really until you're ready to take it from the anal rectal area where it transforms back. Because now you have this abrasive fecal material that's got to pass. And so that's really what it's like. But here, once you get in there, different layers perform one or all three simultaneously. They can secrete mucus. We're going to get into the digestive enzymes a little bit, and whatever you might remember saying pits and crypts. The different chemicals we'll talk about ever so briefly. That's more physiology. Absorption, end products, protection against infectious disease. There's all of that there. Again, you're in contact with what I call the outside environment. So again, whatever we eat and drink, don't think that this is sterile. It's not. The minute you put it in your mouth, nothing is sterile. Okay? I mean, it's covered with stuff. I mean, it's just, you have to understand this from a micro perspective. It's just the nature of things. So we have to, that's a lot of what stomach acidity is about, where before we basically absorb it, we're bathing it in hydrochloric acid and smashing it around a little bit and pulverizing it. That's what your stomach basically does. You want to get down to it. So the three layers to get back: epithelium, for our purposes, simple columnar with goblet cells; lamina propria, the underlayer, which supports the epithelium; and then a very interesting layer of smooth muscle called the muscularis mucosa. This is a unique layer. Basically, if you take a tube like this, I this is your penis. You have a tube. You put something in there, it holds its shape. This, as the food comes in, stretch receptors are triggered, stretching this, and then as it comes down, it forms around the food. It almost shapes itself around the food called the bolus. Biol, food. I like to think of it as a gracie. I have an existential relationship with food. Eats good. We hug that. It makes you happy to think about it. And so you'll see all of those. The epithelium, simple columnar, goblet cells, most of the way, mouth, esophagus, and anus are made up of stratified squamous. Mucus varies in the areas. Sometimes it's laced with, you'll see in the stomach, it's an alkaline mucus because of all the acidity. It helps to set up the barrier. Eases food. It's a lubricant. Secretes enzymes and hormones, particularly in the stomach and small intestine. Again, it's more physiology. I want to identify the structures. Loose areolar connective tissue under any lining cell. Blood supply. This is that MALT, mucosa-associated lymphoid tissue. And we talked about it a little bit in the lymph chapter, but just put a G next in front of it rather than the M, and you have GALT, or gut-associated lymphoid tissue. MALT, skin, salt, contains lymphoid follicles that help to defend, and the smooth muscle here they call it local movement. So it's in here. So if this was here, these little indentation, okay, ducts of gland, which protrude outside the alimentary canal. Again, in the stomach, you will see we call them pits. And in the small intestine, we call them crypts. The green are those mucosa-associated lymphoid tissue. You can see some of the glandular structures are within there as well. It's outside. And here's that layer. Because so much is going on, you have immune system activity, secretion activity, basically processing at the least, and often absorption of the food, and muscularis. You have a whole network of underlying tissue called the submucosa. So the submucosa has blood vessels, has the base of certain glandular structures. It has nerves that are in there, as you can see. And indeed, if you follow this, this is what they talk about. It's called the submucosal nerve plexus. A lot of authors, this one included, also say it's called the gut brain. Again, we don't need any direct nerve supply to the gut. We'll innervate it to increase or decrease activity. That's why they cut my vagus nerve going to the stomach, because that's insufficient to the I had a dozen ulcers in 93. Prescribed by my first gastroenterologist as a really young trainer. I improved for my second one. I only had one about this big. Blood was escaping. And I'm here to give you this lecture. Despite your humor, I'm in pretty good shape for 74 years old. You were looking at me, she's laughing at me. Not you, you're nice.
Oh, yeah.
That is kind of. No response here from the trio. The doctor. I hear the quiet. Nevertheless, it's really, this brain, it basically does it by itself. It's basically a series of stress receptors, chemical receptors, osmotic receptors. There's osmolarity, it's very good concentrated material. And it's really what controls this whole thing. So you don't need external nerves, but they're useful if you have them, for the most part, unless they're creating, contributing to the problem. Then you have, see the circular and then longitudinal, the muscularis externa, closer to this is the lumen or the opening. And then outside you have serosa. Serosa, connective tissue and an external lining of simple squamous cell. Because, again, serosa means a serous fluid is just a lubricating fluid. It's not particularly viscous, just a hint of viscosity, not nearly as thick as mucus. That's there. Submucosa, more regular tissue, blood, lymphatics, lymph follicles, the nerve plexus, supply the GI tract, abundant elastic tissues. And I should have mentioned that, and I'm glad that they noted that here. It gains its shape. Once again, your stomach empty. Empty, your stomach can be as small as, have a volume of a couple of ounces. Your stomach filled could stretch to a gallon. They have removed half of my stomach, not once, but twice. If you do bariatric, stomach cinching to prevent people from eating a ton, it's designed not to expand. It will stretch back out. So my stomach is probably now more likely about a quart. So I can't sit there and go to the, graze at the buffet for hours. You can't do it. I used to. But now it's more about small meals more frequently, that type of thing. So I can't go out and get jumbo steak and all that. It's just not, hey, it's okay. I've got a very big dog at home. He'll help. Try and stop him. He doesn't like fruit and vegetables. We really have to talk with him. He's like that. So the elastic tissue regains its shape even after you've gone crazy having a food pig out. And interestingly, because it brings to mind my daughter, and I was telling Jen about this, with figure skating, you're so conscious you have to be in these ridiculously form-fitting outfits. And you would do this for a competition, and then, as soon as the competition was over, you didn't have one for another month. I go, "What's up?" She goes, "We're pigging out." She had hardly eaten for weeks. So, it wasn't eating. The eating disorder was being not eating and now all of a sudden gobbling. Everything that was, and the sphincters are not valves. They call them valves. They're thickenings of the muscle that are there. And that's in the muscularis externa. That's the segmentation and peristalsis. Always intercircular and outer longitudinal, sometime with other layers part of it. Are you advancing or am I just pressing this for fun? And the outermost, which is the visceral peritoneum, again, some realer connective tissue covered with mesothelium, single layer squamous. In the esophagus, because it's a dry lining, we call it adventitium. Moist lining is serosa. And you see, meso is interesting. You've seen this? To say in lungs, that's kind of a mesothelium. You see them advertised on TV. If you're lawyers who are trying to make, these poor people are going to die from cancer from exposure, particularly to asbestos. And that was mesotheliomas. That's really years ago. We had no environmental. People didn't wear. We didn't wear them in the operating room. Right? Not in the operating room. Emergency room, we did. That whole nonsense. Oh, it's ridiculous. You see people today, you watch any of those TV shows, masks, gloves, gowns, hoods, goggles. We wore scrubs. That was it. Somebody came in bleeding. Didn't I tell you that? Didn't tell you that? Yes? I didn't tell you. Did I or didn't? You have to tell me. Do you remember that anecdote? No. I mean, people would come in with a cut. We just slam our hand over it with a big laceration. Quick, I need suture set. I need local anesthetic. We got to rinse this thing in betadine for a while. Put your hand right on it. Sometimes inside. I had a gunshot wound. Put your hand in there and hold that bad boy. What happens if I move it? He'll die. Okay. Not just like in the movies. I mean, by naked hand. No. You do what you have to do. We didn't worry about it. The words HIV were not in the lexicon. I was in an area where there was a ton of HIV. People didn't know what it was. The gay population knew what it was. And I mean, my downstairs neighbor knew what it was. People he socialized that we knew very well had it. And I know at least 2 of them succumbed to AIDS. But before the word even existed, because the article wasn't published in 81. We were friendly with them between 77 and 79. This isn't new under the sun, folks. Because we didn't, stupid COVID. Let me preach. It's like we went nuts over that. If somebody hadn't told us it was deadly, there's this horrible flu going around. I realized that the initial report was over the top and we had to do something. But the reality is, once we heard about that, every time I see somebody walking around in a mask who appears to be young and healthy, I mean, I'm sure there's some good reasons. It drives me nuts. They're in the car with a mask on. It's your car.